Late April 1943. In the quiet hills near Tunis, Tunisia, Allied reconnaissance patrols moved cautiously through the remnants of a shattered German front. The Axis lines had finally broken, their retreat collapsing into chaos. Amid the gnarled olive trees, a patrol stumbled upon what would become one of the most valuable intelligence finds of the entire North African campaign. There, abandoned but almost untouched, sat a monster of steel. A German Tiger I heavy tank, tactical number 712. Its massive 88mm cannon pointed silently toward the horizon. No smoke, no damage, no demolition charges. The crew had simply fled. For Allied intelligence, it was the dream of a lifetime. A fully functional Tiger captured intact. This machine, the most feared tank of the Second World War, had been left behind in perfect condition. The lessons drawn from this 60-ton steel beast would soon prove more valuable than the destruction of a dozen Tigers in battle. Yet what the Allies would learn went far beyond German craftsmanship. Beneath the Tiger's thick armor lay not only engineering brilliance, but a fatal weakness, one that would haunt German strategy until the very end of the war. A flaw not of armor or firepower, but of sustainability. The Tiger's insatiable appetite for fuel would cripple the mighty machine long before its armor failed. By early May 1943, the North African campaign was collapsing completely for the Axis. Between May 7th and 13th, nearly 230,000 German and Italian soldiers surrendered in Tunisia. The once proud Afrika Korps ceased to exist as a fighting force. Among them were remnants of the Heavy Panzer Battalion 501, one of Germany's elite armored units, and one of the first to deploy the fearsome Tiger tank in combat. The Tiger's debut in North Africa came just months earlier. In late November 1942, 3 Tigers from Panzer Battalion 501 rolled off the docks at Tunis. More arrived over the next several weeks, building the battalion's strength to around 20 operational Tigers by January 1943. Their reputation preceded them. Reports from the Eastern Front, where Tigers had first appeared near Leningrad earlier that year, told of German tanks that could destroy Soviet T-34s from over 2 kilometers away. Their 88mm gun, derived from Germany's formidable anti-aircraft weapon, could penetrate any Allied tank armor long before enemy gunners could return fire. When the Americans first received British reports of these super tanks in early February 1943, many dismissed them as exaggerations. A tank weighing over 55 tons, with 100mm frontal armor and a gun effective beyond 2,000 meters, sounded like propaganda. They would soon discover the truth, and it would shock them. On February 14, 1943, the German army launched Operation Frühlingswind, Spring Wind, against American positions at the Fade Pass in central Tunisia. Elements of the 21st Panzer Division, reinforced by Tigers from Battalion 501, struck with devastating force against the U.S. 1st Armored Division. At the Battle of Sidi Bou Zid, the Tiger proved its worth. When American forces counterattacked 2 days later with over 50 Sherman tanks, they were met by a well-planned German ambush. The Tigers stayed back, firing from extreme range while lighter Panzer IIIs and IVs lured the Americans in. By the time the smoke cleared, 46 of the 52 Shermans lay destroyed or disabled. Post-battle analysis revealed something surprising. Only 1 Sherman had actually been destroyed by an 88mm round. Most had fallen to the smaller guns of Panzer IIIs and IVs. Even so, the psychological effect of the Tiger's presence was enormous. The mere knowledge that Tigers were in the area spread fear through Allied ranks. A few days later, at the Battle of Kasserine Pass, American troops faced large-scale German armored attacks for the first time. The Tigers were few in number but dominated the battlefield psychologically. U.S. Shermans with 75mm guns had to close to within 300 meters, often suicidal range, to have any chance of penetrating the Tiger's side or rear armor. The Tigers, meanwhile, could destroy a Sherman from 2 kilometers away, long before return fire was possible. Army medical officers soon began noting a new condition among American tankers: tiger phobia. Reports described crews freezing up or refusing to advance upon hearing that Tigers were nearby. Entire units requested air or artillery strikes before moving forward. The legend of the Tiger grew, and with it, the fear. By March 1943, U.S. training manuals had to address this panic directly. New intelligence briefings explained that Tigers were few in number, and that their weaknesses, though few, could be exploited. Yet when it came to facing one head-on, the only practical advice was still to call for air support or artillery. But by April, a new truth emerged on the battlefield, one that had nothing to do with courage or tactics. The mighty Tigers were breaking down. The battalion's war diary, later captured by British forces, revealed a grim pattern. When the unit first arrived in Tunisia in December 1942, all 20 Tigers were operational. By December 28, only 14 remained. By January 30, just 11. Shortages of spare parts and chronic fuel problems kept the rest immobilized. Fuel, more than enemy fire, was killing the Tiger. Each machine required enormous quantities of gasoline and lubricants. German logistics, already stretched thin by Allied air attacks and supply disruptions, simply couldn't keep up. By April 20th, with Allied offensives breaking through every German line, the order to retreat came. But there wasn't enough fuel to move all the tanks. Crews were instructed to destroy their vehicles to prevent capture. Demolition teams worked frantically, but in the chaos, some were left untouched. One of them was Tiger 712. Its crew abandoned it in an olive grove near Tunis, likely expecting engineers to destroy it later. They never returned. When Allied forces arrived, they found the Tiger almost pristine. Its guns silent, its engines still intact, its armor unscarred. On June 9, 1943, Lieutenant Sue of the 104th Tank Workshop, Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, documented the discovery. He described the scene: a makeshift German field repair site scattered with abandoned vehicles. 2 other Tigers lay nearby, one destroyed by demolition, another missing its engine covers. But Tiger 712 stood complete, untouched, and fully functional. For Allied intelligence, this was no ordinary battlefield trophy. This was a once-in-a-war opportunity, a chance to study Germany's most secret and advanced weapon in total detail. When Colonel George B. Jarrett, chief of the U.S. Army's Foreign Materiel Branch at Aberdeen Proving Ground, received word that a Tiger had been captured intact, he immediately ordered it shipped to the United States. For months, Allied armies had fought these tanks without truly understanding them. Now they would. Tiger 712's long journey to America was about to begin, and with it, a revelation that would change how the Allies fought and how future armies would think about armored warfare forever. The discovery of Tiger 712 electrified Allied intelligence. An intact Tiger tank, the machine that had terrorized Allied crews from Tunisia to the Eastern Front, was now theirs to study. No longer a shadowy menace whispered about in after-action reports, but a tangible machine of steel and engineering brilliance. British engineers carefully examined it where it stood, an olive grove turned graveyard of German armor. The Tiger was fully functional. Its engine was undamaged. Its gun and optics remained in perfect condition. Even its ammunition racks still held a few unused rounds. The Germans had fled too quickly to destroy their masterpiece. Colonel George B. Jarrett, chief of the U.S. Army's Foreign Materiel Branch at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, understood immediately what this meant. The Allies had fought the Tiger for months without ever fully understanding how it worked, or how to defeat it. Now, the Americans would have a Tiger of their own. Orders were issued to recover the tank. But even that was no simple task. The Tiger I weighed nearly 57 tons. far more than any Allied recovery vehicle could handle alone. American M31 recovery tanks, designed for 30-ton Shermans, were barely half as capable. It would take multiple vehicles, bulldozers, and heavy-lift cranes just to move the Tiger from its resting place. The operation became an engineering mission in itself. Roads had to be reinforced. Bridges were tested for load-bearing limits. Some routes were impassable altogether. The Tiger was simply too heavy. The convoy moved mostly at night, crawling through the Tunisian countryside to avoid any lingering Luftwaffe patrols. Though by May 1943, German air power in North Africa was all but gone. What would normally have been a 4-hour trip to the port of Tunis took 3 days. Every mile risked disaster. A bridge collapse, a mechanical failure, or even a misplaced crane could have ended the recovery. But the Allies succeeded. The Great Tiger was loaded onto a Liberty ship, the SS Samuel P. Bush, bound for the United States. When the ship left Tunis in early June 1943, it carried not just a tank, but the key to understanding Germany's armored might. The voyage across the Atlantic took nearly 3 weeks. In early July 1943, the ship arrived safely in Norfolk, Virginia, where the Tiger was offloaded using a 70-ton crane, one of the few capable of handling its weight. From there, the tank was carefully loaded onto a reinforced flatbed railcar for the final leg of its journey to Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. By mid-July, the Tiger rolled through the gates of the Army's top testing facility. For months, American engineers and ordnance officers had prepared for this moment, translating captured German manuals, studying field reports, and gathering every piece of intelligence they could find about the Tiger. Now they could see the truth with their own eyes. Brigadier General Gladion M. Barnes, head of Army Ordnance Research and Development, ordered an exhaustive test program. The Tiger would be studied in every way possible: armor, firepower, mobility, reliability, and most importantly, its logistical requirements. The first inspection left the Americans impressed and uneasy. The Tiger's suspension system used interleaved road wheels and torsion bars, giving it exceptional ride quality across rough terrain. Its Maybach-Alver transmission allowed the tank to move forward or backward with equal speed, a rare advantage for defensive warfare. The 88mm KWK-36L/56 gun, derived from Germany's famous anti-aircraft gun, was a marvel of precision. Firing at muzzle velocities over 900 meters per second, it could destroy any Allied tank before they even entered range to return fire. Armor thickness measurements confirmed the legends. Frontal hull and turret armor, 100 millimeters. Gun mantlet, up to 200 millimeters. Side armor, 60 to 80 millimeters. It was, by all appearances, invincible. To many engineers, it seemed less like a tank and more like a fortress on tracks. But then, the Americans turned to the numbers that really mattered: fuel capacity and consumption. The Tiger carried 532 liters of gasoline, about 140 U.S. gallons, stored in 4 tanks at the rear. Its Maybach HL-230 engine produced 690 horsepower, enough to move the 57-ton monster, but just barely. The German manual claimed a maximum range of 195 kilometers, 121 miles, on paved roads and only 110 kilometers, 68 miles, off-road. At first glance, these figures already seemed problematic. The American M4 Sherman, though smaller and lighter, could travel over 160 kilometers, 100 miles, on a similar amount of fuel. The Tiger's range looked short, dangerously short. Still, Aberdeen's engineers needed proof. They began a 6-month testing program in July 1943, running the Tiger through every possible scenario: paved roads, cross-country trails, obstacle courses, and simulated combat conditions. What they found was staggering. On paved roads, at steady cruising speeds, the Tiger consumed 195 liters per 100 kilometers, roughly 1.2 gallons per mile. That gave it a maximum range of around 117 miles, consistent with German claims. But once they left the test track, the Tiger's hunger for fuel became catastrophic. On the cross-country course, the Tiger had to climb hills, churn through mud, and cross soft sand. After just 32 miles, the tank's fuel tanks were nearly empty, consuming 132 gallons of gasoline. That meant a fuel rate of 4.1 gallons per mile, reducing its real-world range to only 34 miles. In simulated combat trials, things got even worse. Engineers replicated the conditions of real battle: rapid acceleration, sudden stops, turret traversing, idling for observation, radio communication, and engine strain during quick repositioning. The results shocked everyone. The Tiger burned 6.1 gallons per mile. At that rate, a full tank would last just 23 miles of fighting. The Tiger was a tactical marvel, but a strategic disaster. Colonel Jarrett's team ran the numbers. Under combat conditions, a single Tiger would need 1,500 to 2,000 gallons of fuel each week just to stay mobile. A full battalion of 20 Tigers required between 30,000 and 40,000 gallons weekly, just for the tanks themselves, not counting trucks, half-tracks, or supply vehicles. By comparison, an American tank battalion with 53 Shermans consumed roughly 65,000 gallons per week, including all support vehicles. That meant the Germans were burning nearly the same amount of fuel to operate less than half as many tanks, and often couldn't replace what they used. When all support requirements were factored in, the truth became clear. German heavy tank battalions consumed more fuel overall than entire American armored battalions, despite fielding far fewer vehicles. Aberdeen's engineers now understood the Tiger's secret weakness. It wasn't vulnerable to gunfire or artillery, it was vulnerable to logistics. In October 1943, Colonel Barnes compiled the findings into a classified report distributed to all U.S. armored commands. It acknowledged the Tiger's battlefield superiority, its unmatched firepower, invulnerable armor, and terrifying reputation. But it also revealed its Achilles heel, a combat range of only 30 to 40 miles under realistic conditions. If you could cut its fuel, you could kill the Tiger without ever facing it head-on. From then on, Allied strategy shifted. Air forces targeted German fuel depots, convoys, and rail lines. Ground units were instructed to maneuver constantly, forcing Tigers to burn through their limited reserves. The more they moved, the sooner they died, not by shellfire, but by starvation. Tiger 712's time at Aberdeen had just begun, but already it had exposed a truth that would reshape Allied doctrine. The Tiger was not beaten by superior weapons or tactics. It was beaten by mathematics, by gallons and miles, not shells and armor. And in that revelation, the Allies found a new kind of weapon understanding. By the start of 1944, the Allies had learned a vital lesson from their captured Tiger. It wasn't just about better guns or thicker armor, it was about endurance. A tank could have the finest optics, the most powerful cannon, and impenetrable steel, but without fuel it was just a bunker on tracks. The Tiger's secret weakness, uncovered through the tests at Aberdeen Proving Ground, had rewritten Allied thinking. Fuel was the lifeblood of modern war, and Germany was bleeding out. Even before the Tiger's arrival in North Africa, German planners had known their fuel situation was dire. The Third Reich had no major domestic oil reserves. Its entire war effort ran on a fragile chain of synthetic fuel plants and captured oil fields. The Ploiești oil fields in Romania provided nearly half of Germany's liquid fuel supply. The rest came from coal-to-liquid conversion plants, using a process developed by IG Farben to synthesize fuel from coal. But synthetic fuel was expensive, inefficient, and fragile. Each refinery could be knocked offline with a single bombing raid. And by 1943, the Allies had begun targeting them relentlessly. In August 1943, the U.S. Army Air Forces launched Operation Tidal Wave, a daring low-level bombing attack on the Ploiești refineries. Hundreds of B-24 bombers roared in at treetop height. The operation cost more than 50 aircraft and hundreds of airmen, but it dealt a severe blow to Germany's fuel supply. Though production recovered temporarily, the writing was on the wall. By the time of D-Day in June 1944, Germany's strategic fuel reserves were barely half of what they had been the previous year. Every Tiger that moved, every aircraft that took off, every truck that delivered ammunition, all drew from the same dwindling supply. German tank commanders felt the squeeze immediately. In France, the newly formed Heavy Panzer Battalion 503, equipped with Tiger IS and the new Tiger II King Tiger, reported crippling shortages even before meeting the enemy. In some units, each tank was allowed to move only 10 kilometers per day for training. Crews were ordered to limit turret movement and even reduce engine idling to conserve every drop of fuel. One report from July 1944 during the defense of Normandy recorded that Panzer Lehr Division could field only a handful of operational tanks, not because they were destroyed, but because they were out of gas. The rest sat silent in the hedgerows, waiting for supplies that never came. Meanwhile, the Allies, fully aware of the Tiger's fuel hunger, began turning fuel itself into a weapon. Every major Allied bombing campaign of 1944 targeted the arteries of Germany's fuel system: rail lines, refineries, and transport depots. Synthetic fuel plants at Luna, Merseburg, and Bolin were bombed repeatedly. Each time they were repaired, new raids would strike again. By September 1944, output had fallen by nearly 70%. For the first time, German armored divisions were literally immobilized. Tanks were abandoned not because they were hit, but because there was nothing left in the fuel trucks. The Tiger, once the terror of Tunisia and the pride of the Wehrmacht, was becoming a victim of its own appetite. German war diaries from the period tell a grim story. In August 1944, a Tiger battalion near Paris recorded in its logbook, "Fuel issue, 50 liters per vehicle. Movement impossible." Another unit on the Eastern Front reported, "Enemy pressure heavy. No fuel for withdrawal. Vehicles destroyed by crews." The same pattern repeated again and again. Elite armored battalions left behind to fight to the last shell or scuttle their tanks in place. By late 1944, the German High Command had begun issuing desperate orders. Tank crews were instructed to share fuel between vehicles, transferring what little remained to a few select tanks that could still move and fight. This grim practice became known among soldiers as Kannibalisierung, cannibalization. Tanks were stripped for parts and drained of fuel to keep a few others alive. The crisis reached its peak during Operation Panzerfaust and the Ardennes Offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, in December 1944. Hitler's last great gamble in the West depended entirely on fuel. His plan was simple: strike through the Ardennes, split the Allied lines, and capture the vital fuel depots at Antwerp and Liège. If successful, the captured Allied fuel would sustain Germany's armies for months. But even before the attack began, German commanders warned of the obvious risk. General Heinz Guderian, the father of Germany's armored doctrine, bluntly stated, "The success of this operation depends entirely on fuel. Without it, our tanks will go no farther than the start line." He was right. When the offensive began on December 16th, the German spearheads, including Tiger and Panther tanks, advanced rapidly at first. But by the third day, their progress slowed dramatically. Allied air power had grounded briefly due to bad weather, but the roads were clogged, and supply trucks couldn't keep up. Within a week, entire units were stranded. Many Tigers were abandoned intact, their massive engines silent, their crews forced to continue on foot. German officers began siphoning fuel from disabled tanks into a few remaining runners. but it was hopeless. As one German tank commander later wrote, "We did not lose the Battle of the Bulge to the enemy's guns. We lost it to our own empty fuel tanks." The Tiger's performance in the Ardennes confirmed what Aberdeen's engineers had discovered a year earlier. The Tiger was never defeated by superior armor or gunnery. It was defeated by physics, by the sheer impossibility of keeping such a machine fed in a collapsing economy. By March 1945, fuel production in Germany had fallen to less than 10% of 1943 levels. The Luftwaffe could barely fly. Most tanks never left their depots. Even training was impossible. New crews were sent to the front without ever driving their vehicles. The once mighty Panzerwaffe had become a ghost. Its tanks sat in rows, immaculate and gleaming, but dead monuments to engineering brilliance and logistical folly. For the Allies, the lesson was clear and enduring. Firepower wins battles, but logistics wins wars. The Tiger's defeat proved that the strongest armor in the world was useless without the means to move. When the Red Army rolled into Germany in early 1945, they encountered hundreds of abandoned heavy tanks, Tigers, Panthers, and King Tigers, left in fields and forests, engines dry. Some had been blown up by their crews. Others were simply left behind. Each was a monument to wasted power. And yet, even in defeat, the Tiger retained its aura of fear. To Allied soldiers who came across them, these machines seemed otherworldly, massive, imposing, invulnerable. But beneath that aura lay the truth the Allies had already learned in a Maryland testing ground. The Tiger had never been invincible. It had simply been unsustainable. As the war entered its final months, the Tiger, once a symbol of German dominance, became a symbol of its downfall. In the desperate arithmetic of total war, Germany had built the perfect weapon for a war it could no longer afford to fight. The Tiger was not just a tank. It was the embodiment of a nation's fatal overreach, powerful, beautiful, and doomed. May 1945. Across a ruined continent, the guns of Europe finally fell silent. The war that had devoured nations was over. Amid the rubble of cities and the shattered remnants of armies lay the machines that had defined modern warfare. Among them, one stood apart, the Tiger tank. It had begun as a symbol of German invincibility, a weapon that struck fear into all who faced it. But by war's end, it had become something else, a monument to the limits of perfection. Even in defeat, the Tiger's legend endured. When Allied forces advanced through Germany, they found the last surviving Tigers in workshops, rail yards, and hidden depots. Some were incomplete, stripped for parts or waiting for fuel that never came. Others sat in the mud where they had run dry, their massive tracks half buried by time and weather. Yet to the soldiers who saw them, these steel giants were mesmerizing. The sheer scale, the precision of their construction, and the myth that surrounded them inspired awe. The Allies had won the war, but many wondered, what if Germany had built more of these? Could the outcome have been different? The answer lay not in the Tiger's armor, but in its arithmetic. In total, Germany produced just 1,347 Tiger I tanks, and fewer than 500 Tiger IIs. By contrast, the United States built over 49,000 Sherman tanks, and the Soviet Union produced more than 57,000 T-34s. The math alone told the story. For every Tiger Germany built, the Allies produced 80 or more tanks. Even if every Tiger destroyed 10 enemy tanks, and some did, it was never enough. Germany's obsession with technological superiority came at the cost of quantity and reliability. Where the Sherman and T-34 could be mass-produced, repaired in the field, and resupplied with ease, the Tiger required constant maintenance, specialized tools, and a supply chain that the crumbling Reich could no longer sustain. At Aberdeen Proving Ground, Tiger 712 remained a centerpiece of study well into the post-war years. Engineers and ordnance officers from across the Allied nations came to examine it, measuring, photographing, and even disassembling entire sections. Their goal wasn't imitation, but understanding. The Tiger had set new standards for what a tank could be, in armor protection, optics, and firepower, but also in what not to do. They studied its interleaved suspension, which provided excellent stability but clogged with mud and froze solid in winter. They examined its complex overlapping road wheels, which made maintenance nearly impossible under combat conditions. They noted the precision-machined armor joints, beautifully engineered, but expensive and slow to produce. To American and British designers, the Tiger was both masterpiece and warning. In 1946, the British War Office published its final evaluation of the Tiger I. Its verdict was measured, a weapon of extraordinary power and protection, but of excessive weight and mechanical delicacy, unsuitable for large-scale operations. The U.S. Ordnance Department's report reached a similar conclusion: superior in individual combat, inferior in strategic value. The Tiger demonstrates that reliability and mobility are decisive factors in armored warfare. These lessons became the foundation of the post-war tank doctrine. When the Cold War began, both East and West took the Tiger's legacy to heart. In the Soviet Union, engineers studied captured Tigers and Panthers extensively. The result was the T-54, introduced in 1947, a tank that combined sloped armor, powerful armament, and exceptional mobility. Unlike the Tiger, it was simple to produce and maintain. By the 1950s, the T-54 and its successors would become the backbone of armies across the world: fast, rugged, and reliable. In the West, American designers drew similar conclusions. The lessons of the Tiger influenced the creation of the M26 Pershing, which arrived too late to change the course of the war but set the stage for future designs. From it evolved the M46, M47, and eventually the M48 Patton, tanks that emphasize balance over brute strength. Even the British, long champions of heavy armor, shifted direction. Their post-war designs, like the Centurion, prioritized firepower, mobility, and reliability, achieving the balance the Tiger had never mastered. Yet despite its flaws, the Tiger's influence stretched far beyond the battlefield. In the years after the war, it became an icon, a symbol of engineering ambition and martial power. War films, books, and documentaries celebrated its mystique. Model builders recreated it in miniature. Historians debated its tactics and design. The Tiger had become more than a weapon. It was a legend, one forged in fear and fascination. For many Allied veterans, it remained the ultimate opponent. To see a Tiger in combat was to stare down death itself. Even decades later, veterans recalled the sound of its 88mm gun, the grinding roar of its engine, and the way shells bounced harmlessly off its thick armor. To them, the Tiger was not just a tank. It was the tank, the machine that defined their war. But to engineers and strategists, its story held a deeper meaning. The Tiger embodied a paradox: tactical superiority married to strategic failure. It showed that perfection on the battlefield could still lead to defeat if it ignored the broader realities of war, production, logistics, and mobility. As one American ordnance officer later wrote, "The Tiger taught us that it is better to have 10 tanks that can fight today than one perfect tank that cannot move tomorrow." That philosophy would define armored warfare for the next half-century. Today, only a handful of Tigers remain. Of the more than 1,300 built, just 7 complete examples survive, scattered across museums in France, Britain, Russia, and the United States. Each one draws crowds of visitors, standing silently before the massive machine that once ruled the battlefield. Among them, Tiger 131 at the Bovington Tank Museum in England remains the only operational Tiger in the world. Every year, it is started and driven before astonished spectators, its deep engine note echoing across the fields. To hear it is to step back in time, to glimpse the sound that once haunted the deserts of Tunisia and the forests of Normandy. As the decades pass, the tiger's story endures, not as a tale of invincibility, but of insight. It reminds us that war is not won by fear or power alone. It is won by planning, supply, and endurance. The Tiger tank remains one of history's most formidable machines, and one of its most revealing teachers. It taught the world that strength without sustainability is self-destruction. In the end, the Tiger's greatest legacy was not the armor it wore, but the lesson it left behind. Victory belongs not to those who build the strongest weapons, but to those who can keep them moving.